Hi everyone, welcome to our video on the First Punic War. The First Punic War. Not only a clash of armies and navies, but a struggle between two rising Mediterranean powers, Rome and Carthage. This wasn't just some border skirmish, it was a fight for supremacy, the stakes control of the Western Mediterranean and everything that came with it. Now, let's look at our players. In one corner we have Rome. Rome, a land power. They were disciplined, tough, and hungry for expansion. Their soldiers, known as legionaries, were the backbone of their military might. Their legions were already feared across the known world. But there was a problem. They were practically landlocked. This geographical limitation posed a significant challenge. They had little experience in naval warfare. The sea was a vast, uncharted territory for them, and they needed to adapt quickly. On the other side, you had Carthage. They were the naval superpower of the time. Their ships dominated the Mediterranean, and their sailors were seasoned veterans. A Phoenician colony, their wealth came from trade. Carthage was a bustling hub of commerce, with goods flowing in from all corners of the known world. Their navy was vast. They controlled the seas with an iron grip, ensuring their dominance in maritime trade and warfare. Carthage wasn't just a bunch of merchants, though. They had a formidable mercenary army. These soldiers were hired from various regions, bringing diverse skills and tactics to the battlefield. They could call upon warriors from across the Mediterranean, Numidian cavalry, Iberian infantry, even Greek mercenaries. This diversity made their forces unpredictable and versatile. They were a diverse and dangerous force. The stage was set for a monumental clash between these two rising powers, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. So what happens when these two powers collide? Sicily, this island, was strategically vital. It was right in the middle of the Western Mediterranean. Control of Sicily meant control of trade routes. It also meant access to resources and manpower. Both sides knew this. The First Punic War started with a relatively minor incident in Sicily. A group of mercenaries, the Mamertines, called on both Rome and Carthage for help. This was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Rome and Carthage were now locked in a struggle for Sicily. Rome knew they had a weakness: naval warfare. Despite their formidable land forces, their navy was not as experienced or as powerful. This was a significant disadvantage, especially when facing a maritime power like Carthage. Carthage had a significant advantage at sea. Their ships were faster, their sailors more skilled, and their naval tactics more refined. The Carthaginian fleet was a force to be reckoned with, dominating the Mediterranean waters. But the Romans were nothing if not adaptable. They had a history of learning from their enemies and turning weaknesses into strengths. They knew they needed to innovate to stand a chance against Carthage's superior navy. They needed to find a way to counter Carthage's naval superiority. Their answer? The Corvus. This ingenious device would level the playing field and give the Romans a fighting chance at sea. The Corvus was a game-changer. It was a revolutionary piece of technology that transformed naval engagements. With the Corvus, the Romans could bring their superior infantry tactics to the sea. It was a boarding bridge, a simple yet effective tool that allowed Roman soldiers to board enemy ships quickly and efficiently. This changed the dynamics of naval warfare entirely. Imagine a long plank of wood with a big nasty spike on the end. This spike would anchor the Corvus to the enemy ship, creating a stable bridge for the Roman soldiers to cross. Roman ships would pull alongside Carthaginian ships. The Corvus would then be deployed, bridging the gap between the two vessels. They would drop the Corvus, hooking it onto the enemy deck. This allowed the Romans to board the Carthaginian ships en masse, turning the naval battle into a land battle. Then, Roman legionaries would charge across the bridge. These well-trained soldiers were now fighting in an environment where they excelled. This turned naval battles into land battles. The Romans, with their superior infantry, tactics and discipline, could now fight on their own terms. And on land, the Romans excelled. Their training, discipline and combat experience gave them a significant edge over the Carthaginians. The Corvus allowed Rome to negate Carthage's naval advantage. It was a brilliant innovation that showcased Roman ingenuity and adaptability, ultimately contributing to their dominance in the Mediterranean. Section 5, Naval Warfare, a Roman Ascendance. The Corvus helped turn the tide of the war. Roman victories followed. Mylae, Ecnomus, these were crushing defeats for Carthage. Rome, the land power, was beating Carthage at its own game. Carthage was stunned, but they weren't finished yet. They still had a powerful navy. They still had experienced commanders, but the Romans were relentless. They continued to press their advantage. They built more ships. They trained more sailors. Section 6, Land Battles and a War of Attrition. The war wasn't just fought at sea. There were major land battles in Sicily, Agrigentum, Drepana. These battles were brutal and costly for both sides. The war dragged on. It became a war of attrition. Both sides poured resources and manpower into the conflict. Years turned into decades. But neither side was willing to back down. The stakes were too high. Section 7. The Aegates Islands, a decisive victory. Finally, after more than 20 years of war, a decisive battle, the Battle of the Aegates Islands. This time, the Romans were ready. They had learned from their mistakes. They had built a better, more maneuverable fleet. Carthage was desperate. Their resources were depleted. Their morale was low. The result? A crushing Roman victory. The Carthaginian fleet was destroyed. Their hopes of winning the war were shattered. Carthage was forced to sue for peace. Section 8. The Seeds of Future Conflict. The First Punic War ended with a Roman victory. This conflict, which lasted for 23 years, was a grueling test of endurance and strategy for both Rome and Carthage. The war saw numerous battles on land and sea, with each side suffering heavy losses. The final victory for Rome came at a great cost, but it marked a significant turning point in the ancient world. Rome had proven itself to be a major power, both on land and at sea. The Republic's ability to build a formidable navy from scratch and to adapt to naval warfare was nothing short of remarkable. This newfound naval prowess allowed Rome to project its power across the Mediterranean, challenging the established dominance of Carthage. But this was not the end of the story. The conclusion of the First Punic War was merely the beginning of a new chapter in the ongoing struggle between these two ancient superpowers. The war had left deep scars and unresolved tensions that would continue to fester. The war had a profound impact on both sides. For Rome, the victory was bittersweet. The Republic had expanded its territory and influence, but the cost of the war was staggering. The economy was strained and the loss of life was immense. The Roman people were weary, but their resolve was unbroken. Rome had won, but at a terrible cost. Their treasury was depleted. Their manpower was exhausted. The financial strain of the war had left the Republic in a precarious position. However, the experience gained from this conflict would prove invaluable in the years to come. But they had gained something invaluable. Experience. The Roman military had learned crucial lessons in strategy, logistics, and the importance of naval power. These lessons would be applied in future conflicts, making the Roman legions even more formidable. They had learned how to wage war on a grand scale. The First Punic War had forced Rome to innovate and adapt, leading to the development of new tactics and technologies. The Roman legions became a more cohesive and effective fighting force, capable of taking on any challenge. They had learned how to adapt and overcome new challenges. The war had tested the limits of Roman ingenuity and resilience. From building fortifications to engineering new weapons, the Romans had shown an incredible ability to overcome adversity. The First Punic War transformed Rome into a naval power. Carthage was humiliated. The once dominant maritime power had been bested by a land-based republic. This shift in naval dominance had far-reaching implications for the balance of power in the Mediterranean. They had lost their dominance in the western Mediterranean. Carthage, once the unrivaled master of the seas, now found itself on the defensive. The loss of key territories and the blow to their naval supremacy were bitter pills to swallow. They were forced to pay a heavy indemnity to Rome. This fueled resentment. The financial burden placed on Carthage was immense, leading to economic hardship and social unrest. The seeds of future conflict were sown in the hearts of the Carthaginian people. The First Punic War, while over, had sown the seeds of future conflict. The unresolved tensions and lingering animosities between Rome and Carthage would not be easily forgotten. Both sides knew that another confrontation was inevitable. It was only a matter of time before these two titans would clash again. The stage was set for a new and even more devastating conflict, one that would shape the course of history for centuries to come.